Joining us now to discuss that from our Newsmax bureau in Washington, where he's Skyping in today, my former colleague, Pete Hoekstra, the former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, and here in studio, it's our friend Fred Rustmann, the former CIA officer and the author of the book, The Case Officer. Fred, also chairman and founder of CTC International Group. And Fred, we welcome you back here in studio.
Good to be here.
Fred, we'll start with you since you're right next to me. Then I'll have Pete chime in on this. Did we or did we not know that ISIS would grow in importance and power and grow the way, in fact, they ended up doing in Iraq?
Well, I don't know that they knew how fast they would grow, but they certainly knew about ISIS or ISIL, depending upon whether you want to use the word Syria or Levant at the end. But al-Zakari was the real start of all of this. Al-Zakari was killed by us in a drone strike in 2006 or 7, something like that. And al-Baghdadi took up the reins right there. So the intelligence community knew very well about this group and about al-Baghdadi and his dreams of forming a caliphate, which of course is a lot worse than al-Qaeda, because al-Qaeda were sitting around plotting terrorist attacks on us, whereas al-Baghdadi, who's a very charismatic leader, is calling for actually taking territory and forming this caliphate.
So al-Baghdadi is really thinking more long terms in dealing with geopolitical strides to be made in terms of outlining the caliphate and a unifying, clarifying mission.
Absolutely, and so it's a worse threat, because the worst kinds of terrorism are terrorisms that are state-sponsored. Well, he's going to start his own state, his own caliphate, and from there he'll have the wherewithal to launch terrorist attacks all around the world, as well as taking territory.
Pete, as you join us from Washington this morning, it's a subject that you and I have discussed before, but we often hear, oh, there are intelligence failures. Is this so much an intelligence failure as it is a mistaken judgment and mistaken policy on the part of our current commander-in-chief?
Well, JD, what I would say, it's an all of the above excuse. Clearly, there was an intelligence miscalculation, not understanding that ISIS had the capability of moving from Syria, expanding into the Levant, taking large pieces of territory in Iraq, and actually now establishing an Islamic State. There was a policy miscalculation and a State Department miscalculation and a DOD miscalculation, and not understanding the full capabilities of ISIS, and also probably overestimating the capabilities of the Iraqi army and believing that the Iraqi army would be able to withhold an attack from ISIS. And in reality, the Iraqi army collapsed. And then, again, a misinterpretation or a miscalculation in taking a look at when they thought ISIS was going to attack down south into Baghdad, what they actually experienced is ISIS going north and going to the Kurds, and with the weapons caches that they got from the Iraqi depots, the weapon depots, the ISIS actually had greater weapons capabilities, and they outgunned the Kurds. And then, you can start getting into a calculation of, what America's response has been. Obviously, we have been too slow in arming the Kurds. The Peshmerga, they're a sophisticated military force, but even the best military force, when they're outgunned, is going to have extreme difficulty repulsing an enemy and repelling an enemy like ISIS.
Pete, as you mentioned that, I want to turn to Fred here, because Pete makes the case, and we've heard it from many different quarters. Now, all our weaponry is in the hands of ISIS, courtesy of the meltdown of the Iraqi army.
That's right.
Of course, our troops pulled out. The president was intent on getting them all out of there. We didn't have a status of forces agreement. And we really don't have intelligence, an intelligence operation on the ground, courtesy of the fact our army has vacated. Is there any way to establish some picture of what is happening on the ground now in Iraq with ISIS?
Well, I don't think that our intelligence capability has been completely shot. Yes, indeed, we're not there in person, but the way the intelligence service works is that you recruit these sources and you have communication with the sources. So low-level sources, we've lost them, they're gone. But medium-level and high-level sources, I think we're still communicating with them and we still know pretty much what's going on the ground. And then of course you've got the eyes in the sky and the ears on the poles, and you've got all of that kind of intercept intelligence. So it's not as bad as you might think.
But still not a great situation.
Still
Obviously
not a great
an
situation.
optimum.
It's not as good as we were. No, that's right. And particularly for the airstrikes, we need ground controllers on the ground. We need people there to see where the targets are. And now they're starting to, because of the bombing that we've already done, they're starting to go to the, hide in their little rat holes, and they're going to be harder to find. So I think basically we're too little too late. Now we do have the Kurds, and the Kurds have been on our side all along, even though we've abandoned them time after time. But Kurdistan is another problem. You've got Turkey, you've got the PKK, which is a terrorist organization. You've got the Turks not wanting a Kurdistan, so you've got a lot of political problems right there as well.
It becomes the proverbial sticky wicket, but Pete, I want to pick up on something Fred just talked about, and you made brief mention of, the Peshmerga, the Kurdish forces. Now, is it just the fact they didn't have the weaponry? Getting the weapons to the Kurds, is that going to make a big difference?
Oh, absolutely. The Peshmerga, they are a good fighting force. They've proven themselves in the past. So aligning ourselves with the Kurds right now and aligning ourselves in a meaningful way is absolutely essential. It's time to get them heavy equipment. It's time to get them the equipment that enables them now to outgun ISIS, which has, like you said, these weapons that they got from Iraqi army depots. We also can get intelligence from the Kurds and the Peshmerga. One of the things that, one of the lessons learned from our experience throughout the Middle East in the last 15 years is we need to listen to our allies. They've got the insights on the ground. They understand the dynamics of the region. We need to spend more time listening to our allies. That includes the Turks, that includes the Kurds, that includes the Jordanians, and was to some extent whatever Iraqi government is in Baghdad. But they can give us the insights, and we need to learn how to listen and discern better than what we've had before. But no, we have to align ourselves with the Peshmerga. They can hold ISIS, they can roll ISIS back. We shouldn't be talking about taking the 40,000 people off of the mountain and giving them sanctuary and refugee camps in northern Iraq. What we need to be talking about is rolling ISIS back so that these people can go back to their villages, their communities, and their homes.
About 2 minutes remain, gentlemen, so I'm going to have to ask for some brief answers. Pete, we're going to stay with you. ISIS is bragging that it will not rest until it raises the flag of Allah up top the White House. Now, what's going on our southern border? Because presumably if ISIS wants to get here, he's got to get here somewhere and somehow. What are you hearing about finally securing our southern border with Mexico?
Well, what we're hearing about securing the southern border with Mexico is not a whole lot. We are as vulnerable on the southern border as what we have been for the last decade. No meaningful actions are taking place. I think I am worried about what's going to happen with ISIS in terms of their threats to the United States. I'm more worried about right now what they're going to do in the region, going north into the Kurdish region, but also taking a look at what they may do with Jordan.
With a minute left, final word on our own border, Fred, and the dangers there on our southern border.
I was watching the TV the other night and I saw Osama bin Laden come across. So if he can get across and he's dead, anybody can get across.
We should point out it's the videotape of James O'Keefe from Project Veritas, and though we laugh at it, it's to keep from crying because what O'Keefe had there is a sad and stark reminder of what Pete's talking about, the failure to secure that southern border. To Pete Hoekstra in Washington, to Fred Rustmann here in studio, the author of The Case Officer, we thank you both for your time and what it is you had to say. Thank you both. Well, straight ahead, a new vaccine for Ebola is being made available. but it's in short supply. We'll talk about that with Dr. Jane Orient, but first, a Newsmax Now update. All a part of our program as we continue on this Wednesday. It's America's Forum from Newsmax TV. We'll be back following this time out.